What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. Here for the third podcast, still yet to have a name that's coming soon. But I got my buddy here, Luke Heintz. Is that what it is?
Heinz.
I know there's like an N in there, isn't
Yep,
there?
Heinz.
Okay, so I got him here. Super pumped to have him here because he's also a service-based business owner. For the people that don't know, I was in the junk removal industry. He's in the moving industry, which also goes hand to hand. So I have a ton of good questions for him. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good
How
to
many?
see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's been a while. How many podcasts have you been on?
This will be my third one.
Yeah, you went on with Adam.
I did go on with Adam. I'm trying to think of what the other one was called. It's smaller podcast.
Local?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
talking
I
about
can't think-
moving, or
yeah, talking about just the business in general, kind of
Okay.
like what we're doing.
you should.
So-
I got a really good play for you here.
Okay.
You start a podcast and basically interview local people, just in general, entrepreneurs, business owners, whatever. And then these people are going to start to know you, right? And they're going to learn about what you do. You got your modern moving apparel on, that
Yes,
sort of
sir.
thing. And then it just generates, like, more people are going to want to work with you.
Sure.
You
It
know?
generates people knowing your name.
Yeah, so that's
Simple.
kind of why I
You're
did it.
doing this?
You know,
Gotcha.
I heard that Gym Launch, they had like a podcast where they would interview potential gym owners, and then basically it was just so much easier to get them in the door as potential clients. So I thought that was super interesting. And then here I am a week later starting a podcast.
Yeah. Well, you've been talking about doing this for a while.
Yeah,
So-
I want to be as relative as possible
Sure.
on social media, and a conversation going back and forth and clipping it together is the easiest way to do that rather than just looking directly at the camera.
at the camera and talking about it and looking.
But
at it. Yeah.
besides the point, tell everybody who you are.
So, should I look at the camera when I'm talking? Or
No,
should I look
you're
at you?
good. We can just have a conversation.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. So I'm Luke Heintz. So I founded and started a modern moving company here in St. Louis. We've been in business since May of 2020. I've been in the moving industry, since I was 15. So when I was in high school, I started out moving the furniture, doing all the labor. Did that on the weekends, on Christmas break, summer break, things like that, all throughout high school. And then when I graduated high school, I went to Mizzou for about 3 weeks, realized that it is what it is. It's the biggest party school in Missouri. And I just didn't want to be involved in that. So I dropped out, came back, kept working for that same company I had worked for another 2 years until I turned 20. And then when I was 20, I started to kind of think, what do I want to do with my life? What direction am I heading? Do I want to go to trade school? Do I want to become an electrician? And so I kind of went through the different steps, like trying to become an electrician, went to Rankin, did like their seminar or whatever they have there. Realized that I didn't want to do that. And so I went back to the drawing board, talked to some friends, and they were like, why don't you just start your own moving company? At the time, and I do now, but at that time I was really against going into competition with someone that I valued as a friend, right? He had taught me a lot. And so ultimately coming to the decision that that's what I wanted to do, mostly because it was almost like I went to school for moving for 4 years instead of going to college. So that's what I knew I wanted to do. I knew the industry really well. I knew how to sell the services that we offer. And so I just decided to start my own company in May. And so we started off with like me and a few buddies renting U-Hauls every now and again when I would find a job. And within a month we had 7 full-time guys working every day. So it's kind of just taken off from there.
Right, that's amazing. And the 7 friends, the 7 employees, you're probably tapping into your friends.
Yeah, no, I've
Right.
used every single one of my friends
know.
that I've ever known or ever had any connection with to move furniture, and a few of them still talk to me. That's for sure.
Okay, there you go. Well, it's like people are so against hiring your friends, which I don't know what you can say on this, but I hired my friends, constantly. Maybe they were part-time or full-time. And there was a little, oh my gosh, Kyle's making all the money and here he is paying me X amount, right? Did you go through any issues like that? Or
I didn't really go through any issues like that. It was more of them taking it seriously. It was hard for me to like boss my friends around. They might not see it that way, but it was hard for me because I did have to be the bad guy, and I don't like being the bad guy. Still, even with our current employees, I don't like
It's
being the
a
bad guy.
yeah, it's a hard thing to do.
It's a very hard thing to do. Like, but no, I never really had any issues like that. I actually enjoyed my friends working for me for the sole factor of the trust level that I had with them. Like, even if they goofed around and screwed around during work, I knew that they were doing a good job and taking care of my clients.
Yeah, they don't want to screw you or make you look bad.
Exactly. It's different than hiring someone that you don't know that just comes in and you don't know what they're doing at all times, right?
So you talked about, you were in college, right? You were probably partying like crazy where you shown a certain image of yourself and then you become this business owner, kind of like myself, where I look back at the pictures or even videos that my friends have of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine that going on social media.
Yeah, I mean yeah, exactly. Definitely have some of those. I honestly, it took me a while because I dropped out when I was 18, so it took me those 2 years of like finally taking things like seriously and getting my life together. It's all of a sudden, you're 20 years old, you get through your first year of business, of owning your own business, and you do $1.2 million in sales, and you're just like, you know what? Maybe I should stop getting drunk on a Tuesday night in the middle of the week when I have all of this I have to take care of, or partying or whatever it was. I mean, I had to grow up extremely quickly.
Right.
So
I think when, I was that partier, right? Wanted to go out all the time, get hammered on the weekends, that sort of thing, to become an entrepreneur where the same friends that I was actually hiring saw my weaknesses, right, of me going out and that sort of thing, to now me becoming their boss, to where I feel like immediately I started to think I have to change immediately to where they can start taking me serious, right? And, you growing your business and you got to hire management roles. It's hard to be able to actually teach those people like, hey, you have to straighten up here so these people take you serious.
Yeah. No, that's definitely my biggest challenge and that I had to overcome about a year ago was learning how to let go of the reins a little bit. And like, I'm a perfectionist when I do my work. And so if I'm trying to teach someone how to do something and they're not doing it right, instead of showing them, hey, this is how you do it right, I'm like, move over, let me do it. Like, I'm that type of person, macro manager, micromanager, however you want to name it. And so I feel as if I've gotten a lot better at that over the past year and a half. But that was kind of my biggest hurdle for a while, was like letting go of the reins and like understanding, like, it's all right now. We're still 3 years in. We're still in the learning phase of things, right? We're trying to perfect our business model so that we can go out and franchise, sell it, do this, do that. And so it's a lot of, with how much do you have to do in my side of the industry, it's different than junk removal, right? And we've talked about this before. Like, it's not just throwing a old couch in the back of the truck.
You don't care about anything.
You just chuck it. That's techniques that you have to learn and teach. Even just the people that you're working for, right? It's a high stress environment. People are moving that have never moved for the past 40 years. They're going to be a little crazy.
Sentimental value for all the items.
For literally every single item.
Yeah.
Right.
So I've got a question for you. I want to dive deeper into, you were in high school, right? And you were working for this moving company. And was this a younger guy who was owning the business, or an older guy?
Yeah, so he was, at the time, let's think, this was 7 years ago. So he would have been like 25, 26. So he's about my age that I am right now. And he had been in business. Has been in business for over 10 years now. I'm actually really good friends with him now.
Like
locally.
Okay.
Yeah, local here in St. Louis. It was actually one of my best friend's brother-in-laws who owned the company. And so that's how I got introduced to him. And I mean, he taught me everything I know as far as like how to do this, how to do that, how do you handle this situation, stuff like that. Obviously running a business and stuff like that, not having any experience of running any type of business, I had to learn all that myself. So,
right. So you went to him and said, hey, like, did you go to him and say, hey, man, I'm starting a moving company? And like, how did he react?
I mean, the conversation was really awkward for sure. I felt terrible. I'm just that type of person where I don't like having confrontational conversations. And so it was definitely extremely awkward. He laughed at first because I don't think he realized I was like, the way I worded it was like, hey, I'm starting my own company. And I just assumed he knew what that meant of, hey, I'm starting my own moving company. And he was like, okay, so like, what are you gonna do? Like, what kind of company? And I'm like, moving company. And he kind of laughed, which, you know, I'm sure he was definitely a little put back and by surprise when I said that. But again, it's in the past and we're cool now.
So now you have all these employees, right? How many employees do you have? And, you know, say you've got your A players that are like, they're crushing it. You know, I'm sure you're worried about losing those people at some time, and they could be telling themselves every single day, hey, man, if Luke can do it, I can do it. And then if they've even heard this story, they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to be the next one. And they come to you and have that same conversation. How would you react? Did they sign non-competes?
Yeah. So, I mean, we do have a couple of employees that have signed non-competes, like in the sales side of things. Obviously, there's a lot of work that I put into those guys, teaching them how to sell our product, sell our service. And so they sign non-competes. We have a few movers that have signed non-competes, not all of them. We've got about 25 total employees that's including our 2 sales guys. So we've got about 20 to 23 movers that go out on a daily basis and, you know, fulfill contracts that we have in St. Louis. And
is this 7 days a week?
6. We don't work Sundays. We're the Chick-fil-A of moving. So
okay, there you go. Clip it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So me and you started the business literally at the same exact time, right? Similar
I think
stories.
you were just a few weeks in front of me, even maybe a month.
I think I started mine end of July, maybe August. So I guess I was right after
you. After me.
Yeah, okay. So I was a little after you.
So I started the business when I was still working for the other company. I would work every Sunday. So I would, someone would call me, and what I used to do is at the end of my tenure with that company, I was a sales guy. So Monday through Saturday, any job that I would book we would do it Monday through Saturday. Now I would have people reach out and be like, I need this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, our schedule's full. We obviously don't work on Sundays. I'm going to go do it myself. I'm not going to throw that money away. Right. And so that's kind of how I started doing it. And then when you got to the point of like, obviously it's not fun work. I mean, no one wants to move furniture around. My big thing that I realized, and I actually was thinking about this on the way here, was what was the moment that you realized you wanted to start your company? I'll ask you that next because I am actually curious.
Okay.
But for me, I was moving a 900-pound safe up a flight of stairs with one other person. And I was getting paid, I think at the time, $15 an hour or something like that. Took us an hour, so I made $15. The company made $600. And my back was completely tortured.
Right.
Just torched. I mean, ruined my back forever, moving this thing with another dude. And so I remember driving home from work that day being like, I have to find something else to do. I don't know what it is, but that was kind of my defining moment. Did you have a defining moment where you were like, yeah, I'm going to do it? Or did you just...
So the way that it played out when I started my business or actually took that step, because that first step is like, you know, people say it's the hardest step. Sure. They can never actually take action.
Sure.
You know, I was obviously an electrician. I was doing that for about a year and I was making $15 an hour at the time. And, you know, the company that I was working for, I believe that they were doing in the range of $100 to $150 million a year. And I was like, oh, I'm no different than this guy is exactly what I was thinking. Or how can I become this guy who's running this massive company? And I would see the invoices of them billing, you know, the people that we were doing work for. And I knew that I was getting paid $15 an hour and they were billing like $150 an hour for me, where they were just making a massive profit. Yep. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. Why am I not on the other side of this?
Exactly.
So I did that for a year. You know, I learned a lot. I matured. It was a great job. It's created a great life for my family as well. You know, but you get on social media these days and all you see is business, business, business. Look at this car, you know, they got the people with the jets, you know, and you see people just all around crushing it to where I was like, man, I want to be this guy. And it just like me wanting to be this guy every single day, I became so unbelievably desperate to make more money, to be able to live that lifestyle. So it got to the point to where I kept working. COVID kind of came around towards when I actually quit. And it was just the level of how desperate I was. I was like, I have to do something.
Sure.
And then that first month, it was like, I went from an hourly worker making $15 an hour to finally, doing a job and making $500 in 30 minutes. And I was like, wow, my life has changed.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that was honestly, obviously when you start seeing more money roll in than you were making when you were making $16 an hour and you're doing 30 grand in a year, right? It's not fun. But when you have that first taste, you don't ever go back, right? And it's like, it's almost just like having a girlfriend, right? Or having a significant other. Like, no matter what type of like if you really love somebody, like no matter what type of problem arises or comes about, you're gonna figure out a way to make it work, right? And that's kind of how I've been. Like, it has been not very fun at a lot of points in the past 3.5 years, right? But you always kind of look back on how far you've came and what you've been able to accomplish yourself, and you're like, yeah, I mean, I'll deal with a day like this 10 times out of 10 if I never have to move a 900-pound safe.
Of course. Yeah,
up a flight of stairs, right?
And,
so,
I think people look at you, right? Like without a podcast, for example, they don't know much about you to where they see you going from a zero, from making, being an average guy to running a $2 million a year company.
Sure.
Where it's nobody sees the roller coaster side of things to where you're just getting constantly kicked in the balls. I literally just made a video about this, and I was like talking about how hard it is to become an entrepreneur and to stay in the game constantly, right? And that's why a lot of people fail, is because they get kicked in the balls
so many
over
times.
And over and over again, and it's a test every single day.
It takes a special person to do, and even, I mean, obviously any entrepreneur takes a special person to become an entrepreneur. I have a theory where it takes an incredibly special person to run any type of service business, right? You have a very small, especially in St. Louis, you have a very small pool of people that are willing to do the work that you have for them, right? And so to find the good people, employees are always going to be, the hardest part of a service industry business, right? It's hard to find really good people. Luckily, I have great people. So I've been able to find good people, and then they know good people. And so and then those people know good people, and you just keep kind of building it like that. Took me about a year and a half to figure that out, right? You just got to find one good guy. That's my theory.
That's what I always say. Find one good guy. If you can find that one good guy that, they can manage the crew, that sort of thing, where you can focus on what actually matters. So I want to dive deeper into this specific topic of employees, because since COVID, right, nobody wants a job. Everyone is getting unemployment money and this and that. And people complain about, maybe they're doing a couple $1 million a year and they could do $10 million a year, but they can't find the employees to be able to scale.
Sure.
Where I had this issue a little bit and being able to find these employees, but I also I had the open mindset of, why are people thinking this way? And I'm going to keep on trying to find these key players that are going to help me take me to the top.
Yep.
For you, it sounds like you struggled with employees at some time. How did you find those right, employees, and how did you find a quantity of them as well?
Well, so it took me, obviously, part of this business, and I talked about it earlier, was my first year at 20 years old. By my 21st birthday, we had done 1.2 million in sales. And so we went from 0 to 100 real quick, as I quote Drake. But I had to figure out that was the biggest proponent to everything. And we took a dip our second year because of that. A lot of trial and error of, if Indeed, ZipRecruiter, stuff like that. We did that for a while. Never works out. There's a reason people are usually on Indeed or ZipRecruiter.
There's a reason people don't have jobs.
Correct.
For the most part.
Correct. Or are looking for another job. And so I actually started, I think this was about a little over a year ago. I started going up to other moving trucks at gas stations and stuff like that. And if I could, it was like I said earlier, if I find one of them, it only has to be one, if they're willing to come over, and it's literally a sales pitch on some of these people, because they're happy at these current companies, like, hey, you have room for growth here. We're a newer company. You can become a sales guy in less than a year and a half, 2 years if you work your butt off. that's how I've been rolling for a year now, and it's the greatest thing I've ever done. Do I feel bad in some areas of like
Don't
poaching?
don't hate
No.
the player, hate the game.
Exactly. That's what my method behind it is people just want to be treated well. I mean,
Right.
you want to be treated well.
Of
I want
course.
to be treated well by my employees, and I would want them to be the reciprocator of that as well, right? So, I just make sure that I treat my guys with the same respect that I
Right.
deserve, and people are happy to work for me, right? Even though the work's not fun, we make a fun environment, and we take care of our guys.
So is that blown up at all where these like company
Nope.
owner? Okay, that's good. So, I have a lot of clients around the country, obviously, and, they're trying to find employees. And I'm like, I remember you told me this, a year or two ago. And I was like, hey, my buddy said that you should, it's working for him. You should try this. And I know a couple of them have done it,
Yep.
and it's worked out quite well for
Yep.
them.
I mean, I make it like on the way back from here, I will probably stop at a Quick Trip or a gas station and just, see if there's
Is there any
see if there's a
Calichunks
truck.
around
Yeah,
here?
exactly. So I mean, it works for some people, it doesn't work, but it's like a lot of selling your employee, like selling that person, like come work for me, and
Right.
it's so
And-
worth it. Every single one of them are like, yeah,
And
if I wouldn't have listened to you, I'd still be miserable working at
Right.
X, X, and X.
And as much as employers don't like people doing this, right, and they think that it's messed up and that sort of thing, that's a reality check for you or me, right, who is the business owner, to make sure that you create that environment where your employees are like, no, man, get out of here. I'm not working for you. I'm sticking with them until the
Exactly.
end, and that's
Exactly.
exactly the culture that you have to create. So, we started during COVID. We'll say, we're kind of riding off that time. Did it make a positive impact on your business or negative impact? Because for my business personally, like, I think I started my business at the perfect time. The reason why is because all these people started to work from home all of a sudden, and money was just flowing like crazy, to where it was so much like we had the luxury of being able to come to their house whenever to do junk removal. And there was just so much money flowing around where, like, I feel like COVID scaled my business like no other.
I mean, that's the only reason why I did as much as I did my first year in business, right? Besides the fact that I kind of, in St. Louis at least, I was the first like young moving company, right? Modern moving. It blew up mostly because people got tired of sitting in the house. And so they wanted something new. So they would go buy a new house. The housing market was nuts. And so when you have all these people moving, well, of course, people are going to trust the one company that has 25-star reviews, and all these other companies, have a 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, just not great reviews, right? I mean, not that 4.6 is bad. It's really not. But compared to a 5-star rating,
Of course.
clearly, like, this is a newer company, they care about what their work is, right? Their product is. And so it was really easy to sell people on that idea.
And usually the company owner is actually way more involved at that point, where there gets to
Yeah.
a point in time where you're just focused on the money, and the quality itself will drop. Where at the
Correct.
beginning you're making a name for yourself.
Correct.
Nobody's going to get a better service.
So I have like the two best pieces of advice I got from somebody like an entrepreneur that had been doing it for a while was, don't ever remove yourself from the business. Always stay present. And by that, they mean with, obviously employees, but also customers, right? So even today, I make it a point to call every single customer, even if it's like moving one piece of furniture from point A to point B. If that's it, I still call them. Even if it's a text or something, I communicate with them in some way to make sure they're happy. And so, that's part of the scaling of this, where obviously that will start to, disappear a little bit, but there always has to be someone that is watching out for quality control and making sure that the customer feels like, hey, this company actually
Right.
really does give two shits about me. You know
Right.
what I mean? So
I've honestly faced this issue multiple times too, where you hire all these employees. Like right now, I have 13 people that work for me on an online business. And it's really pretty automated for myself. Obviously, I've got to get put the content out there. There's many things that I have to do, but when you have, like, I have people that work in all around the country
Sure.
and all around the world. I have people barely speak English, stuff like that. to where it becomes so easy to let those people kind of do their thing, and then you just become more and more comfortable to where you're not going off the charts anymore. You're finally hitting that plateau, maybe even going downhill, where you get hit with that reality check where, hey, if you want to scale this business, you need to get your head in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
yeah, no, and honestly, I've realized that more than ever in the past year and a half. Like, my goal is by the time I'm 30, I want this to be way bigger than I ever envisioned it or I ever wanted it to be. And I think that, with that, people have different motivations. Obviously, making more money is a huge motivation to most people. But my biggest motivation is just leaving a legacy of something that I built. Like where the girl that used to sit next to me in math class in high school goes, holy crap. I used to sit next to that guy who owns that in math class in high school. You know what I mean? Like, it's something
she
like
didn't give
simple
you a
like
shot
that.
at that time. Now
No,
she's knocking
exactly.
on your door.
No, but
So I want to bring up something. I just thought of something. Obviously you're good friends with Parker, and you grew up around we'll say a lot of successful people,
Sure.
That sort of thing, which I kind of saw the opposite side of things. But I had Parker on the podcast last week, and I used to talk about how the very first time I met you, we went to the Ritz, and I was in my Chevy Equinox that the motor
Yeah.
was getting ready to blow on it, and I was scared to pull up to the valet.
Yeah,
right?
you parked across the street.
Yeah, I parked across the street and came in there.
Yeah.
But you hang out with Parker a lot, right? Or you did it, one time, and he pulls up with exotic cars. He's got the watches. He's got all these things, living that lifestyle that, is just. What's it like being around that? What was it like for you? Because I know how big of an impact it made me. Like, man, I'm a loser. I need to go work harder. So I'm pulling up like this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I went to a private Christian school in St. Louis. I didn't really grow up around that at all. I didn't really start seeing all this until high school. But it definitely, I'm personally not a big car guy. I know you know that. So
Yeah.
like it doesn't get me super
Cool
that excited
Ferrari.
anymore. Yeah, well, obviously I
Yeah.
think they're cool, but
Yeah.
I'm just like, I've seen enough of them at
Yeah.
this point. But I mean, it definitely as a mover making 30 grand a year, like you're just like, yeah, I mean, that's pretty awesome. Like clearly he's got something that I don't, as far as like what is he doing differently than I am? Right. Well, I was just moving furniture and he was selling, $500,000 cars. That's the big difference, right? And so how can I maybe not like compare myself to him, but also just what can I do to be on a higher level of
the stuff that you're looking at when
Correct.
it comes to him is probably the right things, and I'm looking at the wrong things.
Yeah,
I'm looking
exactly.
at the cars,
Well, yeah.
I mean, you're looking at the operations side.
Exactly. Right.
So a big driver for me is watches, cars, houses. Like I have
Sure.
a very expensive taste, unfortunately. I wish I was
Sure.
the Walmart t-shirt guy, and
Well, I'm more of an experienced guy, and I know
Okay.
you are too, but I'm more of like I like to eat like really nice food. I like to go on vacation a lot, like visit cool places. Like I'm not a big like I have a nice watch because this was
Yeah.
actually the first thing I bought when I started the company. But like that's it, right? I drive a 2016 Jeep Grand Cherokee. That's enough for me. Like I don't need anything crazy flamboyant, I guess. But that's just me.
Right.
I don't ever dish on like I love your Lambo.
yeah,
Your Lambo's
right.
sick, right?
So
But-
for me, we're obviously young, right? And
Sure.
you have different interests than me. I love food too, unfortunately, and I'm the guy that's going to go to the restaurant and order
Everything.
way too much food that
Yeah.
I'm not going to eat, and I'm going to take none of it home, and
Exactly,
they do it
yeah.
do it the next night. So, a big driver for me is obviously those material things, the watches, all this stuff, and I've had them, right? I've had the Lambo, I've had the Shelby, I've had the Range Rover, and I've spent a ton of money on these things and also have lost them, right? Lost money on them. I have got watches, Rolexes, Omegas, all this stuff. And I feel like there's like, again, it's a roller coaster for me to where I really want these things and then I get them and I'm like, wow, this is like, doesn't fulfill me whatsoever. Like I bought the Lambo, right? And I thought it would be like the best thing ever. And I drove it for maybe a week and it was just like, every time I hop in, it's just like, I don't feel like, oh man, I want to go for a ride. It's just, It's nothing like that to where, I've heard successful people talk about this where they'll get at points in their life where they want to buy really expensive stuff
Sure.
and, they spoil themselves and then it's just like an average, it's an average day. And I feel like I'm that guy. I always have to set the bar higher, which is constantly a battle because you need to make more and more and
Yeah.
more money. So I give you a lot of props for that. You said that you like experiences, what kind of, just like vacations or?
Well, just seeing new things, experiencing new things, traveling. I mean, it doesn't have to be vacations, right? I'm very loose because I don't ever really take a vacation. My vacations are like, all right, I'll take off work a little early on Friday and come in a little late on Monday, right? A little 4-day weekend type of thing. I've only taken one vacation in 3 years, like a week-long vacation. But like I just like experiencing, like that's where I like would want to put my money, right? As far as like to go back to like seeing Parker and like how he lives his life and stuff like that, is it's more of what motivated me. I'm trying to find the right word to describe it, but it was almost just like what motivated me was seeing how financially free he was and how like financially cuffed I was, if that makes sense, right? So like, at that point he wasn't, how he is now, but he was still able to like afford really nice things and go to nice dinners and stuff like that.
Pick
and,
up
like,
every check.
We're like at one point, we'd go to the Ritz, just him and I, and I'd be like looking in my bank account before I go into the Ritz, just being like, hopefully my card doesn't decline, But I think it was more, and it's crazy to say this, but he was probably my biggest, and this is actually really crazy to say, biggest role model. And through, starting the business, he was the one that was like, do it, just do it. Who cares what people think? Who cares what your old boss thinks? Like, just do it. This is for you, and just only focus on yourself right now. Do it for you. And so it's weird to say because he's a little younger than us, right? But
he looks older than us.
He looks older than us, and he's like way smarter than either of us. I mean, at least me. But yeah.
Going back to like the entrepreneur, being a leader, right? Where we're a certain type of person, the partiers, right? We've all done it.
Sure.
Where you hire your friends, that sort of thing, and you don't really have a backbone. Hey, this is how it's done. You can't do that. Parker's that guy who's like
yeah, I don't
I'll tell
care.
you exactly how it is.
He doesn't care. He'll say anything to anyone. He's always right, and no one else ever is. And you're just like, yes, sir. I've always been that way to him. Like. I really respect his opinion and what he has to say.
So I want to bring up some, you've done, I've watched you go from, we'll say when I met you, you guys were doing, 100,000 a month, maybe a little less than that. Now you're doing over 2 million a year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the difference? For the people that are watching this, right, that own the moving company, the junk removal company, any service-based business, if you were to give any advice to get to 1 million a year, what is that going to take? And then also, what took you from 1 million to 2 million a year?
Is really, so I'll answer the second question first. So really, I had to start figuring out, so with any service-based business, you can't really find that many differences, right? Like people always ask you the question when you're trying to sell them on your company, it's like, why should I use you and not 2 Men in a Truck, right? That's always what it is for me. We make our experience a little bit more personalized with them. So from the moment that a customer calls in or a potential client calls into our office, we have our sales guys answer the phone. Whichever one of us answers the phone, you're working with that person from that point on until the truck's unloaded and everything's put back together in the new house. You only work with one point of contact. You're not calling up 1-800 number, talking to Stacy, Michelle, Julie, all these different people, Brad, like just whoever. And people like really enjoy it. It goes back to that thing of just me reaching out to every single client, right? People enjoy personalized experiences, right? Because you can't really change much about the actual labor and the actual work, right? Obviously, you can be better than one company is at it, but you can't really go beyond that, right? You can't. There's like no new like AI technology that picks a couch up and sets it down for you. It's just
a service business would be extremely profitable.
It would be awesome. Yeah. Hopefully that comes out soon, but that has been my biggest driver because I didn't realize that at first. I did realize it, but it was in the back of my head of how do I grow it, right? So the more sales guys we had, the more we do in revenue every month. That's just plain and simple, because part of their job is not just picking up the phone and being a receptionist every day, right? They go out to apartment complexes, they go to storage units, self-storage units, they go meet realtors, they go do this, they find connections, LinkedIn, they're big on LinkedIn. Just meeting people in the industry and around the industry builds the business, right? And so there's no better lead than an organic lead.
Of course, yeah. And that was also some questions that I wanted to have when it comes to paid traffic, and it's become harder to make profit, we'll say, doing paid traffic. Are you guys how are you guys getting your leads right now? And are you spending a lot of money on ads in order to do the $2 million a year?
Not really. So we do a couple $1,000s in Google ads every month. It's crazy that we're doing this today, because yesterday was our July recap. So we went through July and looked through, how much our pay-per-click and all that stuff. I'm not good at it, but I know what I'm looking at when I'm looking at it. And so I went on our CRM through our software that we use for the whole company, scheduling, billing, invoicing, all that kind of stuff. It also has our CRM in there. So every time somebody calls in, when we're filling out, how do you hear about us, stuff like that, it all goes put into the CRM. And our organic leads beat our Google leads by almost double in July, which I had never seen before. It's usually almost always Google, which is huge, right? Your method's working. And so
what I've noticed with Google ads, I was spending $12,000 a month on Google ads, right, to get maybe a $300 job in return, right? But we were getting a quantity of them.
Sure.
To where, there's a couple ways that I look at this, and this is what people do not get, and nobody talks about in the industry. And maybe you've never heard this, is it's easy enough to run ads, but actually to profit on the back end is another thing. To where Ty Lopez, right? He's, the guru, whatever. He's been very successful. He said that the first job that he had, I think it was maybe in the insurance industry. Don't quote me on that. But he said at the time, Google ads just became a thing to where you spend a certain amount of money, and it was you were just guaranteed to you spend $1, you're going to get $10 in return, where you could just spend so much money, and next thing you know, you're making $500,000 a year very easily. Or, people getting on YouTube and, all these different platforms. So many moving companies on Google ads today, to where you run paid traffic, and it's not as just easy as, oh, I'm going to spend some money on Google ads and, I'm going to make X amount of money, where you have to track your KPIs so well. And most people who run ads, they don't know their numbers whatsoever. So they don't know if they're losing money or making money. I talk to people like, what are you spending on Google? Oh, I'm spending $5,000 a month. What's that making you? Oh, I'm making $15,000 a month. Okay, well, why aren't you spending more money? Because if you really think about
you're spending 5 and you're bringing in 15.
Yeah, you get a 3x return.
We have that conversation a lot, right? And so I know, we are looking and putting more money in Google. And now part of the thing that I said, an organic lead is a better lead than a Google lead or a Facebook lead or whatever it is, right? That you're paying for to bring in those leads. By a better lead, I mean just a better job, right? We have a lot of, when you're paying for these Google areas, even if it's just targeted and you're just targeting, the areas that you want to be in, you're still going to creep into the areas that you don't want to be in, and you get a lot of traffic from there, right? I do not thrive on price shoppers. Our company just not thrive off that.
You're not the cheapest. There's always going to be somebody cheaper.
We just don't. If someone's trying to get me down, we obviously have our mark for our sales guys of you can't go lower than X amount of percent, right, on a job. But for the most part, anyone that calls in off a Google lead is a price shopper. So I've really, I don't know a lot about SEO and stuff like that. I really I'm diving into that right now and really doing some research on the SEO thing. Did you do SEO at all?
So here's what I can say about SEO and paid per click, right? Okay. So you spend money on paid per click today, you're going to get calls today, if not tomorrow, right? Exactly. Right away. SEO, if you were to put it on a graph, it's such a slow process. And a lot of marketers will oversell you on how fast you're going to get results. Based on what I know and what I tell people is you need to be willing to spend money for a marketing company if you're going to hire, which I recommend doing so because I know nothing about, what goes on the back end. You should expect to pay for 12 months, really 8 to 12 months without seeing any results before SEO is just like through the roof.
Sure.
But what I can tell you is I was spending 12 grand a month on ads for Google, right? And more even on like local service ads and different platforms. But my SEO was always the most profitable. It brought in the most leads, but it took so long. That was the problem.
How long did you say it took?
I would say where I was like, wow, this is really, you get emails and it says Google paid per click, or it says, Google organic, stuff like that, Google My Business. I didn't really start to see that massive change where I was like, wow, we're crushing it for like 12 months. And also with paid per click, when I say a lot of people go in with the wrong expectations, again, you can't just go in and spend $1 and get $3 back. Sure. That's why a lot of companies, they don't spend a lot of money and they don't know where their money's going. They don't know their numbers whatsoever. They don't know their booking rate, their closing rate, their average ticket, all this stuff. I wanted to figure out how to master the ad game, because if I could do that, that's how you take a company, that's how you scale it really quick.
0 to 100.
And I went on Ryan Pineda's podcast, and I can't remember if it was live when I asked him this question or before. I was like, how much money is it costing you to acquire a customer? And here's what he said, which opened up my mind to so many other things. He said that most 9-figure entrepreneurs that he knows, their goal is to break even. It's a win if they break even. So if you spend $5,000 to acquire a customer at $5,000, technically that's a win, when the average entrepreneur is going to say, oh, I lost money. This doesn't work. I'm going to, quit spending money on that. To where if Starbucks runs an ad, right, you need to be tracking lifetime value rather than just doing a job one time for that person. To where if Starbucks runs an ad, the lifetime value that they know is like 14 grand. So if they spend, we'll say $70 on an ad to get you in the door for you to buy a $8 coffee, technically they lose a ton of money, but you're going to be back there next week buying a coffee for your girlfriend, and next month, right? And then they know over time, the customer they get through the door who might have, they might have lost money on, in the long term based on lifetime value, they end up profiting. So for you, it's like, you spend money to acquire a customer, even if you break even, you're hoping that it's going to be a lifetime client, and they refer other business to you.
That's a good way to look at it. I've never really looked at it that way, but that does make a ton of sense as far as like, you aren't just paying for like a one-time thing. If you do a good job, they're going to refer you to Grandma Judy, Aunt Cindy, whoever it is, right?
So again, like I want to go back on this because it's like, a lot of these entrepreneurs, they're going to spend money on ads and they're going to lose money. But the question isn't, or you don't tell yourself, hey, this doesn't work. It's how can I make it work? And I want to give this quick example, which changed the game for me. So I knew, I heard that from Ryan. I started watching Alex Hormozy and reading books. And like, I started seeing people talk about this who are scaling big time, right? Focusing on selling, getting them in the door for less and then selling them in the future for more products. I forgot honestly where I was going with that, but let's see. Okay, got it. So basically, what I was going to say was, I wanted to get somebody to be a mobile detailer for me, right? And
yeah.
I have 2 cars, and my girlfriend has a car. To where I was like, I'll just get all 3 of them done. That would be that Grand Slam customer for you who's doing a long distance move. I'm not just, hey, come clean 1 car, right? And it's going to be $100. So I call somebody on Google, paid per click. You could tell that their, phone skills were terrible. And I was a little worried about them even cleaning the car. And they came out, right? Employee didn't speak English or anything like that. I was like, okay, do I want them to wash the Lambo? Is really what I was thinking. I'll let them wash the other ones. And I was like, you know what? I'll let them do it. They start spraying the foam cannon on the actual Lambo, and I took a video of it, but their branding wasn't in the video whatsoever. And I posted on like my Instagram story, and then it cross-posted to my Facebook story. Immediately, I get somebody that says, "Hey, I'm looking for a mobile detailer. Can you send me their contact info?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." Sent them the contact info. Right? Probably 1 vehicle, maybe $300-400 out of that job right there. And then somebody posted like a day or 2 later, hey, I'm looking for a mobile detailer. Anybody have any recommendations? And like 2 people commented and said, Kyle just got his done. Maybe he can share, who did his. And then I shared that contact info again to where what ended up happening was he utilized my network, not on purpose, right? But that's what ended up happening for him to land more jobs to where say he broke even or even lost money on getting me through the door. If he simply asked me, hey, would you mind leaving a recommendation for me on social media if we do a great job? And then you tap into that person's audience, and then basically they're going to end up giving you a call to where you lost money on the front end and you can make it profitable just by doing that simple technique, right? So you can spend way more money than any competitor out there because you know that simple trick and they don't.
Interesting.
And that's like changed the game for me. So every customer, at the beginning you say, hey, can you leave me, if we do a great job, and you're pleased and we sweep up at the end, would you leave us a recommendation on Nextdoor or Facebook? We'll give you $15 off, right? You set the standard from the get-go. And then once you actually complete the job at the end, they should be expecting to leave that recommendation. And Google, doing it on Google is great, right? Because it helps with your SEO but Facebook is like going to give you that instant return or Nextdoor because you're tapping into their audience and other people are going to see it.
All those Facebook groups too that I know you're in a few of them that I'm in. But the Facebook groups, like when someone's like looking for something, super easy. You tag me and stuff all the time. You used to tag me and stuff all the time on.
I started to leave those. Yeah, just like
they're super annoying.
The real estate groups and what's going on in O'Fallon, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Here's some more free game that I learned recently. When I started my business 4 years ago, I was like the spammer, right? That would go in these groups and post my company 15 times a day.
You got kicked out
over and over, and I get kicked out, and then. Like, I feel like it was so new at the time when I started doing it that it worked so well. That's why I did it so much. And we were just crushing it. Phone would start ringing to where now there's more, the market's more saturated. Everyone does it.
Sure.
But I manage groups with 20,000 members in them. I'm like the admin to where I could see how annoying it is. And you're getting deleted and also banned immediately, right? I'm that guy who's doing it now.
Who used to do it. Yeah.
So what ended up working out well for me when I tell my clients, hey, go post in these buy, sell, and trade groups and these real estate groups. And then they're like, hey, it's not working. They're deleting all of them. What I started doing here in this area is I started going on all these groups just to test to see if it would work. And I'd offer to buy the actual group. I'd be like, hey, are you interested in selling this group? And say there's 18,000 members in a group, they're looking to trade at $1 a member. So technically they're wanting 18 grand. Well, I'm not going to give them that, nor do I need the group to where I could end up working out a deal and be like, hey, I'll give you $2,000 today for this group, right? I land a couple jobs, I get a return. And basically what I was going to do is I was going to rent out to businesses like yourself to where your header could be, Modern Moving Truck, or you could post whatever you want. Go ahead, right? We're not going to let any other moving companies post in there. And then you could also go live once a week, that sort of thing. To where I started to do that because you're in full control of the audience and who posts in there, and you don't have to worry about that. And you buy one that's already built, and that's exactly what I did. And it's these clients are crushing it just by owning the group itself.
Interesting. That's smart. Did you ever get into any of like the brokering game?
So,
because I just recently started doing that, not with like the particularly moving aspect of it, but all the things that people need when they're moving.
Okay, so you're getting to like subcontracting kind of. Okay, so in 2021 or 2022, I had a private equity company that tried to acquire my junk removal business, right? Ended up just like perfect timing, that sort of thing. Hey, let's put your junk removal company all around the country. And what I learned was that like a junk removal business, I don't know what a moving business would sell at, but most likely a junk removal business is going to sell at like a 3x multiple, we'll say on average, right, of your net profits.
Yep.
Average of your net profits. But a tech company sells at a 16x multiple to where you can build wealth so much faster.
Yep.
And this guy was like, how are we going to implement tech into your business? That's all I care about. I don't really care about the junk removal business. I want to turn this into a tech business to where we can sell it at that 16x multiple in a couple of years, to where it opened up my mind towards like the tech opportunity. And then they were like, hey, we don't want anything to do with the junk removal business anymore. We want to start a company that basically brokers leads around the country, which is the biggest bottleneck for probably any junk removal or moving company is people can't scale their businesses because they don't know how to generate leads.
So you're talking about like an Angie?
Yeah, an Angie, Thumbtack.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's,
okay.
So, and we were going to attract residential clients. We ended up not going that route, we'll say, because I had bigger things going on at the time. So I backed out. But I always knew that, that would be an amazing business for me. And just recently, like this week, I had somebody approach me, a while ago, and they said, hey, you have a massive network, right? Especially in the junk removal industry. I just built a relationship with somebody who flips 15,000 homes a year around the United States.
A lot of homes.
And a lot of them are going to be house clear outs, that sort of thing. Now, we're not going to get all those leads. Maybe we get 1,000, whatever, right? 1,000 jobs. And I have the network. We are now.
Say, wouldn't you just broker those out to all of these guys around the country?
We're now the middleman, right? And some people, they don't like that. But if you can't get leads for your business, you want to partner with those people. And that's how I scale my business, is working with those companies that would just feed you junk removal jobs.
Are you taking a percentage, or if they're saying, hey, bid this job for me, and you're like, all right, well, we'll do it for.
So I'm not going to say the percentage split, but what I will say is the haulers make a lot more money than us, and we're the broker on the deal.
And that's how it has to work for them to break even.
And we have to vet these haulers, make sure that they're the right companies, right? If they're too big, it's probably not going to make sense because their overhead's too high, and we can't have them too small because then they're probably not going to be the best. We're trying to find, your company, right? Whenever you had the 25 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
Gotcha.
So basically, we're now brokering these deals around the country. But I'm saying,
since it's junk removal, isn't it like just easier since you have Junk Academy?
Yeah. So that's why he could have did everything himself, right? But the reason why he wanted me is because I have the network, right? We have 300 people roughly, we'll say around the country. That's not all active. I don't know the exact number of that, but we can subcontract anything out and get the best guys to do those jobs. And then that business, right, is a tech business basically. And and maybe it doesn't sell at a 16x, but maybe it sells at a 6x or a 10x. It's easy to get a high valuation for a company like that.
So here's my thing. So obviously, and this is definitely up for debate between you. So starting a junk removal company right now, is it too oversaturated? Because I feel like in St. Louis, it's everywhere. I honestly think there's over 100 junk removal companies in St. Louis. Am I close?
I mean, I would say there's at least 50.
Yeah.
And I always tell people this is people come and go, right?
Sure.
And I have this relative, and he was very successful in the real estate industry. And he said that when the market's so good, and there's so much money flowing around that everyone and their brother is a real estate investor. But as soon as the market tanks, right, all those people just disappear and they go back to working their 9-to-5 jobs or whatever. And I started thinking about that, and I was like, man, that might be the same way for the junk removal industry. So contractors, right, when their business slows down, what do? They start opening up to junk removal. You slow down in the winter, you could start offering junk removal, right?
That's why
all these people, so all these people do that. And the way that I look at it, there's a lot of competition out there. I will say that. And that's why you have to be the 1% that knows what you're doing and how to scale a business, right? Like the podcast idea that I gave you, how many of those 100 junk removal companies we just talked about are doing that? Nobody, right? I could be the first one. You could be the first one. To where I look at it like there's 99% of those companies out there, and you call them and 50%, 50% of those people answer. Or their truck and trailer, they got 2 teeth, and they only service a certain type of customer, to where there's a lot of competition. But if you can figure out how to outwork these people and market specifically on social media as well, like if you could know how to build a brand, you're going to run every single one of these people over. You just need to be willing to give it time and not focus on, hey, this market's saturated. Everyone does that. I get DMs every single day. Right. And everyone blames me for junk removal saturation.
Yeah, sure.
Because I've exposed the industry online.
Yeah.
Right. To where it's generated a lot of hate towards me, where they're just like, oh, it's never been so saturated, and all these people, I see them either getting out of the business or selling their business. So as many of businesses that go in, right, just as many going out.
So my thing is just I don't know. I legitimately don't know how the junk removal companies in St. Louis stay in business with all of the other competition, right? Like, I mean, we did Thumbtack 2 years ago, and I put junk removal in there, right? And someone would call up to the office and be looking for a quote or put something in for a quote, to bid a junk removal job. And I started really high when I first started doing it, and then at the end, someone would call in with like a same scenario where I had bid it for $500, and this time and they were like, that's extremely, like, that's $300 more than any other company. So then I reverse psychology the situation, and I would go as low as I thought I could, like bare minimum, and they would still be like, that's still too
we
high.
found somebody cheaper.
Yeah. And so it's just, for me, it's hard to add that service and be like, all right, well, technically we're just glorified garbage men, right?
There's pros and cons to everything. When I look at it, for example, where you went wrong with that situation, and every other junk removal business would have did exactly what you would have done, right? Because I hear the same, common thing over and over. Hey, I just bid a job $3,000, and somebody said that they would have did it for $500. Happens all the time. Thumbtack, wherever you generate leads, wherever your marketing is, you're going to attract a certain type of client, and that might be great for your business or terrible for your business. That's why you need to be tracking your sources.
So is it the organic? Is that what you're saying?
Organic is great, but Thumbtack and Angie's List is great for a business that does $0 to $5,000 a month, and they're trying to get to 10, right? That's like a cherry on top, in my opinion, because it's just hard to make money on the platform, and you're so new to business that you don't know what you're doing to, going back to the ad thing, right? Like, end up turning it into a profit. With junk removal, you bid every single one of those jobs over the phone, right? Unless it was so big, where that's what I used to do. And I would either land the job and I'd get there and I'd be like, wow, I misbid this and I'm going to lose money. Or they'd be like, yeah, I'll give you a call back. Let me talk to my wife, right? And then they would never give me a call back. And then that was a $50 lead and it just started adding up. To where the key is you have to figure out how you can get in front of them in person to bid the job, right? 1-800-GOT-JUNK. They're not really quoting much on the phones, I can guarantee you that. But once you can get in person and then create that relationship and be funny, right? And you obviously have to be strategic about this.
So you're talking about the way that you were doing it at one point, of like your guys going out there and being like,
yeah, we would
300 and we could do it right now.
Yeah,
right?
We would bid 95% of our jobs in person, and that solved the issue for us for the most part of being able to raise our average ticket price and land more deals because we were bidding them in person.
So what about like, shoot, I just brain farted. How would you get the customer to allow you to go out there and bid it instead of just being like, I just want you to tell me how much it's going to be over the phone, right? Because I can't do that for mine. Like my side, that side of the industry for moving a whole house, you can't do that over the phone. You have to go look at it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a qualification process to it, right? You need to make sure that that's actually a potential customer. So we'll tell them, hey, this is what our minimum is. This is how we charge, but we don't say pricing. The reason why, we have to come out in person is because we might pick up the same couch yesterday and it was 800 pounds and yours might be 100 pounds, right? We want to make sure that, we see exactly what you have and we're able to give you that discount if we actually can. But what you do is you automatically assume that they're going to say yes to you coming out to the property, right? Instead of, hey, do you mind if we come out to the property? It's the way that you frame it, saying, hey, I'm actually going to be in that area at about 1 p.m. today. How about I stop by really quick? I'll give you that estimate, be in and out in no time. And if it ends up being a good price, that you think that, is manageable, we'll go ahead and knock it out on the spot. How does that sound? Right? Just one.
Sure. That makes sense.
What time do you like? Right. So assuming that they're going to say yes, and then they're like, yeah, that works. Right. And you get in the door. And then when you have that smile, when you're funny, when they see that you're young kids, you can just you can capitalize there, but everyone else is like bidding jobs over the phone and, I'm going to call the next guy, or something else that, has not been great for my business. Maybe you see this trend. I saw this trend is any phone calls that we got, we would make way more money on phone calls than somebody to fill out a web form on a website saying, here's my name, number, address, this is what I need done. Because that was an inbound lead, right? But now it's outbound because you have to call them just to see if you can come and give a bid. And majority of those people aren't going to answer the phone. And you call again, they don't answer the phone, right? To where your close rate is just much lower. To where if we would run ads, for example, we would want a bigger percentage to be phone calls rather than web forms, right? And this is something that marketers don't tell you, nor do they care because they're looking at the actual number of how many leads they're getting you. When I know that common trend in my business was landing those phone calls was much easier than web forms.
I think there is, I would agree with that statement, but it's harder for moving, right? Like if somebody is literally looking to move a desk from St. Charles to Creve Coeur, wherever in St. Louis, point A to point B, you can give them a price over the phone. Now, if you're talking about a 4,500 square foot house with 4 bedrooms,
moving to Florida,
moving to Florida, it's impossible. Obviously, a lot of these bigger companies and corporate companies, they have a calculator that they use. And that's actually what we're working on right now is, all right, what's our calculator? And our calculator isn't to give people a price over the phone because then you lose that personable aspect of selling a customer, right? In person, they want to see your face. They want to get to know you. We want to get to know you and your family, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the bigger difference between like a junk removal and then a moving company. And I think that you have a lot more similar in that side of the industry. You have a lot more similar service-based companies that can do stuff like that, right? Where you can just show up and clean it or give them a quote over the phone. For us, it's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Like ours is, a month before the actual date. People need it now, right? And sure, we have people that need it now. We have people that call last minute all the time, but it's still not something where you can just wing it.
So I just happened to think of a funny story, while you were just talking about that. And I was trying to think of the moving jobs that we've done, right? Because when we're slow or when I'm at the beginning of the business, I'm like, oh, I can do cleaning, I can do moving, I can do demo, I can buy houses, I can do all these things, right? We had a customer that called us that thought that, when you advertise, like I could put my keyword on Google as modern moving, right? Or college hunks. And people are going to click on that and think that, they're calling a different person. So somebody called college hunks and they thought that it was college hunks, but they called me, right? And then basically we got on the schedule and the lady ended up calling us saying like, hey, just want to make sure you're coming out to like move me today. And we're like, move you? We don't offer moving. And at this point I was like, I'm giving up on moving. I hate the industry. Margins are too small. You have that luxury of junk removal, just chucking stuff in the truck and moving on.
Yeah.
To where it was the day that somebody was moving, which I know that you know what it's like when somebody's moving that day. And they've had a moving company planned that was college hunks, but it was us when we didn't even know that we were moving. And we're like, hey, we don't do moving. Like we do junk removal, right? To where she was freaking out on me, over the phone, just yelling at us saying like, you guys got on the schedule, but there was no, like, the communication could have been way better to where we just had to bite the bullet because I felt so bad. And we just went and did it. And it was just like, the jobs are just so scary, right? Because you scratch furniture and stuff like that. Like how often, I guess does something like that happen? We've moved a couple times and, we move a mirror and then it cracks, or we drive to the next job site, it cracks, or you scratch on a dresser.
Yeah. I mean, it's very common. Right? So, part of our sales pitch to people is, listen, our guys are great. Our guys do a really, really, really good job at taking care of your furniture. But there's going to be a bump in the road taking your stuff from here to there.
Bound to happen.
Bound to happen. And so we're very understanding of how to treat that situation, right? Obviously, there's been some pretty unfortunate things that are broken that are a lot worse than, a bar stool breaking. It's not fun to deal with. I don't like having those conversations with people. Like, all you can do is apologize. Most people, I would say it's probably a 65-35 split. 65 are pretty understanding and 35 think that you're the worst human being that's ever lived. Like,
Because there's sentimental
because
value.
there's sentimental value. Not even that. It's more of just like, I was expecting a perfect move and stuff like that. Sorry to tell you, there's no such thing as a perfect move. We do everything that we can do to make sure that stuff gets there as safely as possible. It's not like our guys are like trying to do it, right? They want to do a good job because that's reflected on, how much they get tipped and stuff
and
like
you
that.
incentivize your employees to reduce,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, which is you almost
They don't
have to
like
do that.
they don't like no one likes breaking something or
Yeah.
dinging something. It happens. You're moving stuff, right? So
something I want to bring up, obviously we talked about moving, right? You guys are crushing it, but you're also in the storage side. I went to your old office, which I didn't know you moved until last week, and you had all these different spots where people could store their furniture there. Like, are you looking to explode that side of the
Yes.
business? And how do you like that business? Because I love, not necessarily the storage side, but the storage unit business. I love that. But
so obviously it's just something that happens when you're moving. People are in between homes. They sell their house, had to be out super quick. So it's just a service that we offer, right? But it's the easiest money in the world because, we're already moving the stuff. Right. So if the customer's gonna go and store at a self-storage unit, that's fine. But why not store with us? Because your stuff's just sitting there and we're just making money.
It's
off
already
of it.
wrapped and
It's wrapped, ready to go. It actually, we did the math. It brings down your moving bill by 20% to book with us, to store with us, than it does to store at a self-storage complex. Because sometimes those places are, if it's climate controlled, and all these customers want climate controlled, sometimes it will be like up 3 flights of stairs, up an elevator, up to like, we're in a city. So like not all these are like the storage units out here, right? In St. Charles and O'Fallon and stuff like that, where it's just one floor, right? So it's hit or miss. I love it because it's just
cash
flow at all times. And so obviously at the first building, it was tiny, right? I think it was 4,300 square feet at our first building we had for 3 years. And then we just moved into 16,000 square foot. So we're really like testing out the theory of like, all right, how much can we really bring in here in storage revenue? And I mean, we've been paying our bill on the building and making money since we moved in there. So it's the more space that you have, the more money you can make, right? But obviously, we're almost capped out at the new building. We've only been there since May.
Time for a bigger building.
Yeah. This one we signed month to month, so it's easier. Our last one was 3 years. So it was always kind of just like, I don't want to go get another.
Could you have bought yourself out of that?
Never really looked into it.
Okay.
It was so cheap that honestly, like looking back, we should have just moved out. And that's what we ended up doing. We moved out, like the lease just ended last month. And so we've been out since end of April, early May.
Okay.
So we were like, let's just pay the nut. Like, who cares? Right. But no, there's a ton of money in that. We're just trying to figure out the best way to do it. Right. Because you have to make sure everything's organized, make sure people's stuff doesn't get mixed up with other people's stuff.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, especially when it's household stuff because it's all just random crap, honestly. Right. Like kids' toys, bikes, stuff like that.
Do people ever like, I'm sure this has had to have happened at least once where
I know
somebody never calls you back and they just leave their stuff
no. I actually, sadly, we did have a client that passed away that's been storing with me for 2 years. And so I actually spoke with her
the
family.
Chairs and stuff. Was it the chairs?
No, that was a church.
Okay.
We actually junk removed that.
Okay.
Yeah, for them because they ended up, that was the best storage job I've ever had. So we moved those. So I moved into that first building like a month after I started the business. A month later, I had a church that my parents actually got married at 30 years ago, and they reached out and they were like, "Hey, we've got some chairs. We just need to store them. We don't know what we're going to do with them," and some like Christmas stuff. So we're like, all right. So for 3 years, they paid me $435 a month for 3 years. And then after the 3 years, they were just like, just throw it all away.
Wow. What is that? 18 grand? $500?
Get your calculator out.
I had it on my phone somewhere. I don't know where it is.
Yeah,
Anyway,
no, but it was just stupid, right? It was just dumb. Like, why didn't you guys just do this from the beginning?
That's crazy.
So, that's why I like storage so much, because it's just reoccurring. Pays your bills, and it's cash flow. It's really good cash flow.
Well, if you need a partner on that side, let me know. We can partner on a building.
Yeah, well, I just so there's different ways to store household furniture. So if you go to like a corporate van line like United, Mayflower, those bigger ones that are in St. Louis, you go to their warehouses, they're 300 square foot warehouses, and they use wooden vaults. So one house could be anywhere from 5 of those wooden vaults to 40 of them. They're not very big.
Right.
I would say they're 7 by 4.
Okay.
4 by 7.
So I have another question for you. And we're going to wrap up here in a minute. What is the biggest job that you've ever done? Like, how much money was that job, and what was it?
All right, so I'll give you 2 here, because the second one's pretty cool, and this is the first time we've gotten into it, and we're going to be doing it here in both of them in a couple of months. So the first job is a 50,000 square foot office space for 120 grand. That's a fun one. Lots of moving parts on that. It's that expensive for a reason. And then I've sent out bids larger than that. I've never gotten any of them. And then the other one is 60 grand to Hawaii.
Wow.
So
that's awesome, man. Well, what would you say, what made you the most impact on your life? What advice can you give to everybody? And also, if you could just answer, what your plan is, in the future.
Sure.
What's the bigger picture?
So we'll start with the bigger picture. So the bigger picture is obviously to be in 50 states, right? I want to have a household name. I want people to know what modern moving is all throughout the United States. I want a franchise or branch, whatever you want to call it, right? So that's, down the road. Hopefully we have our first one up by year 5. That's our goal. And then hopefully it's just a spiral effect after that. Again, I want to get it right before we go global or national with it, right? You want to be 100% like,
culture,
this is
the system,
this is the system, this is that. And so, sitting down and mapping all that out takes time, especially if you want to do it the right way. As far as like advice that I would give people is obviously, one, find something that you like to do, right? That you're passionate about. Like if I were to go tell my younger self, like when I was 16, when I first started moving, right? Find something that you want to do. Don't do something for other people. Find something that you want to do, something that you like, something that interests you, right? Because you're interested, and we've talked about it on this. You're interested in things that I'm not interested in, right? But we both have a common goal of wanting to be successful. Right?
Absolutely.
So
awesome, man. Well, great podcast. I know I learned a ton about you.
Thanks,
and
man.
I really appreciate you coming on, and look forward to seeing where you go in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Appreciate you, Kyle.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you guys on the next one.